This is a time when the people have left Israel, and they've left Egypt, and they're traveling toward the promised land, and God is reminding them of the promise that He gave to them. But the promise that God gives is based on, I need you to do something. I can bless you if you follow certain things, if you do certain things, if you accomplish certain things. Why is that? Because we fell away from God. We're separated from God. We have to take a responsibility, human responsibility. And it's very simple, actually. Very, very simple. So here, the prophets, God is speaking, and He's saying, now what I am commanding you today is not too difficult for you or beyond your reach. It is not up in heaven, so that you have to ask, who will ascend into heaven to get it and proclaim it to us so we may obey it? Nor is it beyond the sea, so that you have to ask, who will cross the sea to get it and proclaim it to us so we may obey it? No, the word is very near you. It is in your mouth and in your heart, so you may obey it. See, I set before you today life and prosperity, death and destruction. For I command you today to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to Him, and to keep His commands, decrees, and laws. Then you will live and increase, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land you are entering to possess. It's very simple. At this time, there was no clear understanding. There was no Messiah, there was no true parents, there was no divine principle, but God knew what was coming in the future. And all the people had to do was to obey the basic fundamental teaching that God had given them. And then they would receive blessing. But if they can't follow that fundamental teaching, then they're going to have problems. Not because God punishes them, but because Satan exists. And if you make a condition to go in the direction towards Satan, and Satan is involved in your life, then you suffer. You don't suffer because God punishes you. We suffer because we're separated from God. Because God can't bless us and can't protect us and can't love us. In this day and age, God's principle is exactly the same. True parents have come and they have taught us very clearly, very precisely, the divine principle. This is the truth of God. If you follow the principle in your life, you will prosper, you will grow, you will indemnify history, you will be able to go through the 3 stages of growth. You will perfect your personality, your character. You will become connected to the living God. God will be your parent and you'll be His son or daughter. If not, then, you don't grow. You don't mature. God can't bless you. God can't, give you His blessing and can't save you or your family or the nation or the world. It's the same principle. So I want to start by looking at the mind. Let's go from the outside, from the material to the spiritual. This was about consciousness and about the brain and how the brain works. Now imagine 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago, there was no such thing as people understanding how the brain works. But in modern age, through science and biology and chemistry and physics, then scientists have been able to study the mind to such a degree. And some scientists even have come to believe that all our problems will be answered if only we know, the right mix of chemicals or the right way of dealing with the mind. But they're dealing with the mind in a material way. But scientists and doctors and neurosurgeons have discovered and realized that there's something much deeper about the mind of man. So This is in the middle of this article. It starts talking about a particular doctor. His name is Chalmers. And he wrote an article talking about the easy problems and the hard problem when it comes to talking about studying the mind. He says he divides the problems of consciousness into the easy problem and the hard problem. The easy problems are the sort treated routinely by neuroscientists. These are problems such as what is the neuroanatomical correlate of arousal, or which neurotransmitters are associated with depression. Of course, these questions are not easy in a scientific sense, but they are tractable by the methods of science, which are, for the most part, methodologically materialistic. In other words, if you're unconscious and someone cuts open and they touch certain parts of your brain, they can learn, if you touch this part of the brain, you're going to have this kind of reaction. If you touch that part of the brain, you're going to have that kind of reaction. Science has been able to study and learn which parts of the physical brain are going to affect certain parts of your own system. They can study and learn even the chemicals, the electrical impulses. They can analyze it very, very thoroughly. But it's a very material, it's a materialistic. They're studying something that is purely physical. The hard problem of consciousness is another matter entirely. The hard problem is this: why are we subjects and not just objects? Why do we have subjective experiences? Descriptions of neurophysiological are all in the third person. Neurons do this, serotonin does that. Yet consciousness is experienced in the first person. I, not it. How is the third person matter in our brains related to our actual first person experiences? In other words, you and I have an identity. You know, we don't look at even ourselves, as, oh, this is, my hand, if I cut it, it's going to bleed, and if I don't put a bandage on it, it'll bleed too much, and eventually I'm going to get weak and die. These are all external things. But where in the mind is this identity of self created? How can I feel that I am the center of the universe? Where does that come from? Scientists are baffled. They have no clear explanation. The easy problems of consciousness relate to objective phenomena, neurotransmitters and action potentials. The hard problem of consciousness is qualitatively different. It's the problem of subjectivity. As Chalmers explains, the hard problem persists even when the performance of all relevant functions is explained. No one has been able to explain why am I a human being? Why am I a person? Personality. Identity. From the moment we're born, we grow and we begin to discover, I am a unique, special being, and I am the center of the universe. That is entirely a spiritual fact. It's a spiritual reality. That is the spiritual mind. We have a spiritual mind. And the question becomes, is this identity, is my identity beyond the physical aspect of the brain? What happens if the entire brain is taken away? What happens when my head's cut off? Is this identity, my identity as a self, does it suddenly disappear? Or do I continue to exist? Is there a part of me that can exist beyond the physical, beyond the material? And of course, all religious people, all spiritual people, people who've had near-death experiences, they understand that this is something real. How could physical process give rise to an inner mental life? What is the scientific link between matter and self-awareness? Materialist neuroscience offers no explanation for the subjectivity of our existence, and it's difficult to see how objective phenomena ever could provide a satisfactory explanation for subjective mental experience. How can subjective experience be explained completely by an investigation of brain tissue and neurochemicals? You know, I talk about going to the pornography thing, right? Well, some of the people that were there, they were scientists, and they talk about the effects of pornography. If you sit in front of the computer and you watch pornography too much, then your brain is going to emit certain kinds of chemicals, and you're going to be affected a certain way. It's absolutely true. But where does the solution to any of our problems really lie? If you know, when you go to, if you start to struggle with Alzheimer's, like my father is, or if you become depressed, if you go to a psychiatrist and you sit and you talk and you say, oh, you know, I'm really depressed, I'm struggling, you know, with, you know, I feel so hopeless and helpless in my life, and I'm so angry about this and that. I say, okay, here, go to the doctor and tell them, you know, you're suffering from such and such, and you go to the doctor, and the doctor says, here's a prescription. Then they send you to the pharmacist, and the pharmacist gives you some pills, and you start taking some chemicals. And what do the chemicals do? They're going to either add to or take away certain chemical processes in your mind. Is it possible that with a different kind of interaction with other people, a heart-to-heart, spirit-to-spirit interaction, that you would be able to actually overcome your depression, your anger, your resentment? But once you start depending on the chemicals and you start taking this medication, then unfortunately the side effect is it's going to take away other things. You become, you're not upset with life anymore. Yeah, you're right, I don't care. I mean, it's a sad reality, and it's a difficult problem. And I'm not saying that it's always wrong. Not to, you know, sometimes certain medications are God bless certain medications in certain circumstances. But it's such a fine line, understanding the real relationship between the spiritual and the physical. So this is one of my favorite books, of course, From Science to God. He was a physicist who was studying exactly this problem, and he discovered there must be a God. And then we have the story of this man. He was a neuroscientist. He was a doctor. Yeah, brain surgeon. He is a brain surgeon, and he himself had this incredible experience, this near-death experience. He went into a coma for 7 days. So here's the very person who would know the most about how the brain works, discovering firsthand that there's something much more mysterious. He said consciousness is the most profound mystery in the universe. So what does that have to do with us? Well, it has everything to do with us, because we want to grow and perfect ourselves. We want to accomplish the purpose of our lives, the purpose why we were created here. Why did God design us and create us with this identity of self? And how can we perfect this identity? Father said in this particular speech in the 50-year anniversary, distinguished guest, once we come to know God with certainty and know not just the concept of the spirit world, but also its reality, our life can move forward as smoothly as a car on an expressway. Just as the car will reach its destination safely if the driver follows the rules of the road, keeps his hand on the steering wheel, and doesn't fall asleep, so too, we only need to live in line with the direction from our conscience, which is given by heaven. This is where our mind and body become one, and where the blossom of human perfection blooms and bears fruit. Going deep into the mountains will not perfect one's character. An extensive reading of sacred texts and philosophy books that line library shelves will not unite the mind and the body. God is the great King of wisdom. He did not place the path to perfection in some far-off place. Instead, he placed it in the place that is nearest to us, the place that is most private and safe. He prepared and placed that path inside your conscience. I need to discover the truth of life. And I need to take responsibility and accomplish the purpose of creation. Now, when Father talks about conscience here and following your conscience, he's talking about it in light of people who have learned, believe, and practice understanding that God is the parent of mankind, that God is love, that God, the divine principle creates a framework for us to be free to explore and examine. If you look at the Divine Principle book, when it talks about the relationship, it's very interesting what it says. It says the human mind consists of the spirit mind and physical mind. The relationship between these two minds is like that between internal nature and external form. Oh, of course. We have a physiological brain that's going to, behave a certain way, and we have our spirit self, our identity as a human being. When they become one through give and take action with God as their center, they form a united functioning entity which guides the spirit self and physical self to become harmonious and progress toward the purpose of creation. This united entity is the mind of a human being. So we are meant to relate to each other, and trust each other. And, if your mind, if your spirit self is in the right place, then we are going to behave in a wholesome, healthy, loving, constructive way with each other. Of course, I'm not going to steal from you. Of course, I'm not going to try to hurt you. Of course, I want, if I know God and know my identity as a son of God, and I recognize that you are also God's son or daughter, then naturally we are part of a family centered on love. And we're going to love each other and support each other and help each other. When something's not working at your house, I'll try to come and help you. If you need, if you're moving, then we'll come to help you. Yesterday, Nadia Papalardo was moving from her apartment, and Kiva got off work late, and she was going to go home, and she said, I'm just going to go home and rest, and then she got this inspiration, and she called Nadia on the phone, said, what are you doing? And Nadia said, well, actually, I'm moving, and Kiva said, I'm going to come over, and Kiva went over there, and Connie and Ron Papalardo were there, and then she was helping Nadia move, and they were, they had a good time, and then etc., etc. Relationships were very natural relationships. The world would be a peaceful, wonderful place. The conscience is the faculty of the human mind which, by virtue of its inborn nature, always directs us toward what we think is good. This is the key. It directs us toward what we think is good. Not what we know is good. What we believe is good. However, due to the fall, human beings have become ignorant of God and thus ignorant of the absolute standard of goodness. For this reason, we are unable to set the proper standard of judgment for our conscience. As the standard of goodness varies, the standard of our conscience also fluctuates. This causes frequent contention, even among those who advocate a conscientious life. This means that even if you are part of an organization or a group of people that believe a certain thing, or if you're part of a country that has a certain laws and a certain constitution, or if you think, this is true and this is right and this is good, it might not be true and right and good according to the bigger picture. But because of our limitation in knowledge, we let our conscience connect to what we believe to be the truth, and we act on it. People who commit acts of terrorism probably are very conscientious people. They're committed to what they believe is the truth. But it creates contention, even among those who advocate a conscientious life. The original mind is that faculty of the human mind which pursues absolute goodness. It relates to the conscience as internal nature to external form. So, the original mind is completely spiritual. The conscience that you and I guide our lives by is our own spiritual mind and our physical life's experiences being mixed together. So from the moment you're born and you start to grow up in your family, you are experiencing many, many different things. And what you experience is real, right? It's absolutely real. You experienced it. If you have parents that love you, you experience parents that love you. If you have parents that mistreat you, you experience parents that mistreat you. That's real. That's true. So then as you grow up and you're trying to find your way in life, you're going to act according to the way you think life really is. If you happen to get connected to a group of people that believed in what Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin taught about, the purpose of history and how to create a society that's going to have unity, you'll become a communist. And then with very righteous and very strong determination and commitment, you will follow the communist way because you want to create a better society. But it won't create a better society because it's not the absolute truth. It's not the highest standard of truth. It's not the biggest picture. As long as our spirit mind and physical mind are under the bondage of Satan, the functioning entity they form through their give and take action is called the evil mind. The evil mind continually drives people to do evil. Our original mind and conscience directs us to repel the evil mind. They guide us in desperate efforts to reject evil desires and cling to goodness by breaking our ties with Satan and turning to face God. So this is the dimension of history, the dimension of reality that many, many people haven't understood or realized. Even among religious people, they've never fully comprehended or understood the reality or the nature of Satan or the fall of man. Why do I have the inclination to do something evil? When people do something evil, it creates a certain intensity and excitement. There's a stimulation. A stimulation is there. And they can start doing evil things and be stimulated by that and want to continue to do it, even though it could be hurting them personally. It could certainly be hurting the people around them. But in an extreme, if you become extremely selfish, you don't care. I don't care. I don't care what it does to you. I only care what it does for me. That's the extreme selfishness. And the strange catch-22 or the strange bizarre reality is that every individual is the center of their universe. We are meant to be the center of the universe. But God wanted us to be the center of the universe centered on true love. Then, when we have the inclination to do things, we're going to want to do things that bring joy and happiness to other people because we will experience the joy and the happiness with them. Like a father, an old father who physically can't do anything anymore, but he watches his son play football and win the Super Bowl. He experiences winning the Super Bowl to the same degree that his own son does. Isn't that true? The joy, the happiness that parents feel when their sons or daughters accomplish something, it's absolutely as if they did it themselves. They have all the same experiences without having to do any of the work, in a sense, except that this is my son. God, that's exactly why God made us the way we are. So that whatever good we experience, he would experience the same good with us. So what about today then? Where are we at today? What does God want from us today? It's still so simple. How can we accomplish a revolution of character and come to resemble God? Because we descended from the fall and are born with fallen nature, each of us needs to go through 3 great revolutions in order to accomplish the perfection of our character. I call these the revolution through making atonement, the revolution of conscience, and the revolution of heart. Atonement. Yes, last week I talked about the same thing. Atonement means dealing with everything from the past. You can't pretend that you haven't been affected by things that have happened in your life. You can't pretend that you aren't who you are because of, decisions you made or the things you did. Maybe in the past you were a communist and you stood up and you insulted and criticized and you complained to your family or to your friends, or you might have even picked up weapons and went out and actually killed people to try to promote, the communist idea. And then now, years later, you're thinking, oh my God, I was wrong. That's not, communism would never have solved our problems. And then you've left behind a trail of blood. Okay, I'm using the extreme example here. So, that's a fact, a reality. It's spiritually a real existence, the pain, the suffering that we cause each other, because of sin, because of the fall of man. It's real. And it has to be resolved. That's why atonement, confession, repentance, paying indemnity, being willing to acknowledge and admit, having a humble mind, a humble heart, forgiving others, and then also asking for forgiveness yourself. True parents' entire life revolved around making so many conditions because of the past to indemnify the problems of the past so that people would be able to see a pattern of victory. For 2,000 years in the spiritual world, how do you think Jesus felt? Day after day, watching his followers suffer and sacrifice to try to promote his teaching, and yet not ever realizing the true meaning of why he really came. And then, when Father comes, and the first one and the only one to really understand exactly why did Jesus come, and what did he come for, and then as Father goes out, Jesus' own followers, the people whom he loved the most, turn against him, against what he really would want to see fulfilled, and persecute Father, and attack him, and start to even pray that God would take him to the spiritual, pray that God would kill this man. What would Jesus feel? But then, because of the way Father responds and reacts, and because he never gives into that, he never hates back, he never resents back, he indemnifies, he suffers, quietly and silently and continues to persevere, and then people start to follow Father and start to support him. And then this Christian minister becomes a friend, and this Christian minister becomes a friend. And Jesus himself feels elated. He feels relieved. He feels, it's okay. It's okay. The same thing with Moses. The same thing with Noah. The same thing with all the disciples. The same thing with all the evil people in the world. When Father met Gorbachev, when Father met Kim Il-sung, he didn't put his finger point in their face and say, how many millions of people have you killed? Father understood, this is not that moment. This is not that time. This is the time for this man to feel the love of God. I am his brother. I want to put my arm around him. Let's talk about food. Let's talk about something simple. Let's talk about something, if we were originally connected to God, you and I, and we met in this moment, how would we relate to each other in this moment if you and I were both the Son of God? That's how Father related. True parents came to indemnify all history and then teach us how to live our lives according to our conscience. But our conscience will not guide us correctly if we don't know the divine principle. Now, I know many times I'm criticized. Vince and I have had this conversation a lot. I played golf with Vince this, Tuesday morning. We talked for a while and shared. And, we've had this conversation. He says, you're just saying, our way is the right way and everyone else's way is the wrong way. Oh, that's not it. The divine principle is for everyone. The divine principle is not just Reverend Moon's principle. It's God's truth. It's the truth about God. And if we understand that and we try to make our conscience and guide our conscience according to this ideal of the three blessings, individually taking responsibility for my life, creating a family centered on true love, and then, finding something I'm passionate about and living in the creation the rest of my life until I'm old and I can't do anything anymore, then God will be happy. We'll find happiness. And the people around us will also be happy. That's the meaning of tribal Messiah, actually. Sharon and I, Friday night, we were very blessed. Tom McDivitt came for a special meeting with, he met with Lieutenant Governor Dan Forrester and many, many different senators and congressmen and political people from other states came to North Carolina, and they had a special meeting concerning HB 2 and, how to deal with this mandate that's come from, the federal government and so forth. And Tom called us, and we went and we had a dinner with him. He took us to dinner, and we spent about 3.5, 4 hours just really talking and sharing. And he talked about tribal messiahship from his point of view and his perspective. And he has, he's a very wonderful brother, and he, like so many other brothers, he has a very unique position and a unique perspective. He's been with the Washington Times for so many years. And he said that when he went to this meeting, and he walked into the room, almost everybody in that room knew him. They know him personally. There was people from Oklahoma. There was representatives from other states. And they know Tom McDivitt because they know the Washington Times. He said, you don't understand how important and how powerful and how necessary the Washington Times has been. And especially in this day and age, and he has this personal rapport with these people. And he was talking about the idea of tribal Messiah being, find your passion. What is your passion? And meet people. And have give and take with people. And then you consciously make a note. We talked about how many years ago when Father first started home church with Juan Pil Kim, I lived in New York City, and for a period of time I lived in Soho, south of Houston. That's what Soho stands for. It's part of Greenwich Village and East Village. It's it's this very, I don't know, radical part of New York City. And I lived there with Bill Lay. I don't know if any of you know Bill Lay, but we lived in a loft, and we would go out and we did home church. And I had a couple of blocks, and I would knock on the doors and visit people. And every night we would write down in a big roster, we would check mark. Did this person come to the door? The give and take we had. It's just like what we've talked about before, keeping track of all these little details and getting to know the people. And I remember I had so many experiences. Some people wanted to persecute me, and it was very difficult to get people to open their doors. I mean, you're in New York City, for God's sake. But in any case, home church, he remembered, keeping track, just praying for people, meeting people, praying for people, centered on this principle. So we talked about, now I don't want to put words into his mouth, but generally speaking, we talked about H1, H2. We talked about the children. He says, I don't think a lot about them. I don't. I understand a lot about what's going on. He was at the Washington Times when the Washington Times was bought and taken over and resold. He knows all of these details. He was there. He knows who the players are, what they've done, what they didn't do, what's legal, what's illegal, what's moral, what's immoral. But he said, none of that really matters. He said, what really matters is our own life, our focus, our attention on tribal messiahship in the sense of taking responsibility ourselves for God's providence to the best of our ability. Following your own conscience, following your own heart, based on your own understanding of the principle. Do what you believe and feel is really right. And then God will take care of everything else. God takes care of everything. Tom, very strongly, two very strong things. One is he's very close to Mother. Mother has directly assigned him to do what he's doing. And she even told him to, witness to Donald Trump, I think, something like that. But he didn't talk a lot about that. But the point is, he truly conveyed to us, he sincerely feels that Mother is really connected to True Father's heart and spirit. And very briefly, without being negative, he talked about how, most Koreans, traditionally Koreans, when they think about kingdoms and kings and the successors after kings, the queen is never ever a part of the equation. If a king dies in history of not only Korea, but in the history of all kings, the sons are always the ones who become the center, who get the throne, and they take over the kingdom and they make the decisions. But he said, but true parents, the position of true parents is not a king and a queen in the traditional sense. True parents' position is very, very different. So true mother is an extension, a connection. She is nothing more than the extension of true father. He says he is around her, and he is inspired and truly encouraged by her leadership and by her being sensitive and aware. He said for the last 3 years, she has specifically and precisely kind of gone through he didn't use these words, like a mourning or a period of really respecting and honoring Father and recognizing, for what Father did. But now it's time to move on. It's time between now, 2016 and 2020, now is the time to go forward with tribal messiahship and with fulfilling God's ideal. And, recently, I don't know if you're aware of it, but True Mother started speaking about the arts. Art, music and dance. And she spoke with David Eaton and assigned David Eaton, said, you need to encourage people to perform and practice the arts and do it in a heavenly way so we can really bring joy and happiness into people's lives. So Tom was very confident and very enthusiastic. And I felt really inspired by what he had to say. And he also because he's working now, he's going to become the leader of UPF.
He's not the leader, he's the
chairperson of UPF. And
America.
he wants to come to North Carolina and work with us. And he's completely happy and open. I mentioned him, I said, you should come and speak to our members. He said, yeah. He said he'd be happy to come. Maybe he can give Sunday. He can come on a Saturday to do a UPF thing, then he'll stay overnight. He'll come, he'll give the Sunday service. After the Sunday service, he'll be here. We can share and have give and take with him. I think that would be wonderful. His experience and his life relationship with True Parents is very personal. His brother and his brother's wife, Wanju McDivitt, and also, in his own personal life, he lost his wife. He was left with 5 boys. And then one of his boys got involved with drugs and was going through the process of rehabilitation. But he screwed up, and the result was he overdosed and he died. And it was even at a time when he was becoming very positive. He was with his father, Tom said his son, just a few days before, his son had told him, said, Dad, how did you learn to speak like you speak? He says, what do you mean? He said, I want to be like you. I want to learn to speak and share like you share, so that I can tell people about my struggles and my difficulties, and I can help people. But difficult circumstances. He ends up, overdosing, dying. So, our members, we go through these things, but we have to really remember the big picture. So I felt really inspired by Tom. And I want to close by reading from, Sharon, for some reason, I don't know how she ended up with this book in our, remember these?
Yes.
It's The Way of Tradition. This book was written, it's 1980. So when Sharon was reading some quotes from this book, and I thought to myself, first of all, there's no speeches are in here that Father gave, after 1980. Think of all the things, 1980s and the 1990s and all, there's nothing in this book from any speeches at that time. And not only that, when we used to take this book and we would go through it and we would read from it, none of us were married, blessed. We didn't have children, we didn't have spouses, because it was 1980. And most of us were reading this book in, that year, 1980, maybe 1981. So we didn't even have the concept. We were single, we were young. So how different this book was to us than it would be today. The timing of things is very important. You can't take things that were written 20 and 30 and 40 years ago and then apply, modern historical rules and regulations, so to speak, to them. But there is a couple of quotes in here that I thought was very applicable to what we're talking about right now. I'd like to read from this. And I'll tell you when Father spoke it. He said, "You have studied the principle in the course of self-restoration. How do you achieve perfection of your personality? How can you be recognized as a victor in the progressive achievement of God's dispensation, from individual to universal? God always seeks persons better than those who have gone before. In other words, in the individual level, you have to exceed the level of Adam. In the tribal dispensation, you must exceed the faith of Abraham and Jacob. In the national level, you must exceed even the spirit of Jesus. God always seeks people better than those in the past. Jesus said, you must exceed in righteousness the scribes and the Pharisees. He also said, greater things than these you will do. I have opened the way for you to be better. When you study the dispensations for Adam's family or Noah's family or Abraham's family, Don't just study by letters and words. You have to feel the responsibility of restoring what Noah lost, or what caused Adam to fall, or what Abraham failed in. Don't be a spectator to the history of restoration, but be the host and feel as if you have to do something about these failures. This is what I have been feeling. I didn't feel that this was another story, another's failure. Noah failed. What can I do to restore this, to make indemnity? What can I do about Abraham's failure? Don't be a third person, looking at it all from the outside. Really struggle and feel heartache for these events. Take upon yourself the failure of the mistakes. I have shed tears and struggled to do these things by myself. You must feel the same struggle as I have gone through to open the way for you. You must feel the same things I have. Otherwise, there will be no relationship between us in heart, and no actual relationship between you and God. You are just looking at everything from the outside as a spectator. Take the entire responsibility of history upon your shoulders. Until you come to feel this point, it is still my principle, not yours. When you really feel responsible and take the responsibility upon yourself, then your personality will grow. Let your imagination work and tell you how God would do things. Focus your imagination upon God as the pattern. It is not meant that you should not have individual traits or gifts. You should, and do have your own individuality. Father wants the divine principle to develop your own individuality. Father wants the divine principle to develop your own gifted character into a universal character that can fully communicate with God. You will fully develop your individuality. If you are completely confined within yourself, then the world cannot come in. The world is greater than you, and God is greatest. God is like the ocean, capable of containing all things. You should make an effort to expand yourself and grow more like God every day. Do not be centered upon yourself. In 1965, when Father first came to America, he sat with members. Before he did anything in America, he had already given that kind of guidance, that kind of insight. And if we look at ourselves right now, in this day and age, where we stand, these words are 100% exactly correct and the same. Follow the principle. Trust the principle. Make it your own. Make it your principle, your character, your personality, what you like, what you're inspired by, what you want to do. Then, and you have freedom. We have so much freedom. So what other people are doing, if what they're doing is in accordance to the principle, then it will prosper. But if what they're doing is not in accordance with the principle, then eventually it will cease and desist. It will end. It will not prosper. Just like the Berlin Wall eventually came down, then other things, if people are spreading rumors and lies and saying things that are not completely true about someone else, then let it go. Because in the end, that which is true and good will always prosper. One other thing that Tom really explained, and I felt also very strongly, he says true parents have created this incredible opportunity, that this foundation, their victory, their total and complete victory in their lives, living the lives the way they did as true parents, and setting the example as true parents, has created an environment where, we can do incredible things now. Incredible good things can happen if we practice the principle in our daily lives. So, Vince complains that my last slide is always a slide with true parents in it, so I decided to change it up a little bit. Does anybody know this game, Free Cell? This is a card game that I play way too much on the computer. But what you do is you have to move all the aces over there, and then in order, you have 4 places to move these cards, and then you have to keep putting the next higher card on the aces. But there's a particular setting that I have in my computer. And the way it works is, once I move the card into the correct slot, then automatically, without me doing anything, all the other cards start to move behind it. And they move all the way up to the point where it reaches a point where I now have to make another decision. So, in other words, as soon as I make the correct decision, everything falls into place. Until it reaches a point where I need to make another correct decision. And then when I make the other correct decision, it continues to move. And so, when I make the final correct decision, then all the cards automatically fall into place, and the game finishes, and the cards start to fall down. Has anybody ever seen that? You've seen it? So every time that happens, I think this is really like God, actually. If we do the right thing, if we're going in the right direction, then automatically around us, without us having anything else to do, God will move people and move people's hearts, and God is working in other people's lives too, and things will fall into place around us. So our responsibility, absolutely, is to follow the principle above and beyond everything else, the fundamental core truth of the principle, which is each person is meant to live a life of goodness centered on fulfilling the 3 blessings. Individual, mind, and body unity, centered on true love. And then in your family, you are trying desperately to love your wife and spouse, and to love your children, and to raise your children, and your mom and your dad and your grandparents, aunts, nieces, whatever. Yes, you're trying to love them in a godly way. And then find your passion in whatever you're doing, your talent, your job. Jack delivering those packages. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It can be holy if you have the right relationship of heart and spirit. So this is our responsibility. And our mission in life is to really fulfill. Tribal messiahship means that each of us is creating our own relationships centered on God and true parents and true love. We're creating our relationships both in our family and in our community around us, centered on true love. And that will be powerful. And that will change this world. Okay, let's pray. Oh, Heavenly Parent God, I pray that each of us can realize that we are so fortunate and blessed at this time, in this age. This is a special opportunity. You've given us such a bright, shining light of truth. The divine principle exposes all the shadows from the past, those cracks and crevices where evil hid. But now we can see things clearly, and we can become a light that shines brightly. Help us to really love each other and support each other. Help us to find those people that really need to be loved and to be supported. Help us to help them to change and to grow in a way that is very positive and very hopeful for them. Help us to be parental in our hearts. Thank you for your patience with all of us, and we pray for the will of heaven to be done. Please be with True Father in the spirit world, True Mother here on earth, and all the True family. Help them to grow up and to do what is true and right, and help all blessed families, everyone connected through our true parents, as blessed couples and blessed families, and our children and our grandchildren. Please guide them. And we just pray that we can have confidence that you are the eternal parent of all of us, and that you are in charge of things above and beyond our own capabilities. You are with us. Thank you. Please continue to be patient with us, and we thank you and offer our prayers and offer this holy time with you in our names as Blessed Central Families. Amen and Adieu. Okay, at this time, I'd like to invite Mrs. Sharon Bates to come up and give some announcements.
You're really cool if you have a king and the queen up there.
King and Queen is up there. They're together down there.
Wow.
Okay, just a few quick announcements. The first one is we're going to have a community meeting, not next Sunday, because John, we all kind of felt like that maybe some people might go away for July 4th, but the next week, so I think it's the 9th or 10th, and especially what we're going to talk about, and also if you have any other points you want to talk about, please give those points to Mr. Asada. But about our little kids, we got to figure out what to do with the little ones. We're getting more and more little ones here, and they have no place to play, so we're thinking of some new ideas, and we want to get the community involved of how we can take care of our little ones here. Maybe we have to change rooms, the first room and the second room. But so we're asking at least one parent, especially little ones, to please be at that meeting so you can give your input so we can make better decisions. The next thing is, I guess you saw the Sunhope Peace Prize. I nominated Tatiana Irvin because she's doing amazing things in spirituality and all kinds of crazy stuff. Anyway, I nominated her for the Sunhope Peace Prize. I think we were asked in America to nominate at least 130 people. Then those names go into Korea with lots of other names, and the $199 prize. And then the other thing is the deadline for National Parents Day is the 30th. So if you'd like to nominate anybody, any of your friends or family, nominate them for Parents of the Year for North Carolina. Please fill out a nomination form. I've sent you a couple times now. www.parentsday.com. You go there and download the nomination form. We will have it here on July 23rd at Saturday at 5:30 p.m. And Mr. Jack will be making the chicken. And but we're looking for people that can make some of the food. We're going to sit and eat dinner and do entertainment. I'm looking for people that might want to do some entertainment, might want to sing, want to be the MC, want to serve the food. I'll try to work with some of the youth. And also most important is that hopefully we'll have a flyer soon. I'm going to bother Thomas again and see if he can make the flyer for us because he's very creative and he does such a good job. And then you can invite your neighbors. But if each one of us even only invites one family, this place will be overflowing. Parents' Day is a really nice holiday to thank people for doing what they do unconditionally every day. And it's like representing God's heart. And we'll give a little bit about God at that moment too. So it's wonderful. Another thing, Yanni, I'll turn to you and say. Oh, okay. And then, okay, one more thing. And I don't know if anybody here in this room is struggling about doing your 40-day commission, but if you are, please talk to John and please pray. Whatever condition you can do. Tommy Dibbett also explained to us about that offering. I call it an offering, not a condition. That mothers, to me, it's a gift from Mother to us that we can have an opportunity to pray more, to repent more, to, I know we're always asked to start a new beginning, but to me, if this helps me become a better person, if it helps me love people more, then there's nothing wrong with this condition, you know? If it makes us more humble, makes us a better person, makes us closer to God, closer to our family, it's all good. But there's a reason why Mother's asking us to do this, folks. So sometimes we have to do things just on blind faith, and as we do it, we understand. But I know I've had really good experiences doing this, and also repented on America, and also repented on North Carolina. We've had a lot of difficulties in North Carolina, a lot of people that have taken their lives, many, many things in North Carolina. And now we're separated, you know, two parties, two bodies of our two parents are here now. So there's a lot of things that we can repent, or, you know, the collective sin, right? 4 sins, right? For the collective sin, and pray for our brothers and sisters. You know, as we're parents, we need to pray for people. What do we call it? Any concessional prayers? We pray for people, you know. Interventional prayers. Some people just don't get it. People don't understand. So we pray for them. And we tell God, we're so sorry. We're so sorry. Sometimes our children go wrong ways. So we're always praying for them, that they can understand the right way. So this is our joyful responsibility. So if anybody's struggling with a 40-day condition, if you haven't started it yet, it's not too late, you know. And if you can't make that monetary offering, don't let that be so heavy in your heart. God knows your situation. God knows how much money you have. So it's between you and God about this money situation. You want to do that? Anyway, thank you. I hope everybody can come for Parents' Day, and please support. Let me know how you can support.
Yes, I directly asked Tom, I said, you know, why do we have to be blessed again? Because at the end of this 40-day condition, we were told there will be a special blessing ceremony and everyone should participate. And he just very matter-of-factly, he said, it's not another blessing, this is not a blessing, it's a forgiveness ceremony. He said, look at it like that. It's not, you're not being blessed again, it's a forgiveness ceremony. He said, surely, you know, you can think of something that you could feel you want to be forgiven for. So, you know, that's one way to look at it. The other thing that he mentioned is he was talking about the third book, I don't know how to,
장품옥경.
that one. And he said this book is very, very good because it really talks about the life of the early life of true father and true mother, and and how it's like a historical record of them finally coming to America and the things they did. And he said he has found great inspiration in this book. So we can, the thing about this particular book, it costs $80, but if you go online to Family Fed yourself and buy the book, you also have to pay the shipping. But if we order 10 copies, if we get 10 copies of the book for $800, then we won't have to pay the shipping. It can come, they'll send the whole case directly to our church or whatever. So my question to you is, you know, is there a family here that doesn't have this book yet that would like to go ahead and get a copy of this book? If we can get at least eight families that want 10 copies, 800, 10 copies. If we can get 10 copies of the book, then we can get it without having to pay the shipping. So, just offhand, is there anybody? I know our family is going to get one copy too. No, doesn't count, sweetheart. My hand is up. 3, okay, and then 4. And then we'll also, I talked with Klaus in Charlotte, and then, you know, if they want to get some copies, then we could even combine that way. Okay, I'll follow up on that. Okay, thank you.